Tonight, South Korea crisis. Martial law reversed in South Korea after president's surprise decree sent shockwaves. New sanctions. China hits back at US chip controls with limits on key raw materials including gallium, germanium and antimony. Biden in Angola. President Biden makes remarks honoring the past and future of the Angolan-US relationship during his first visit to the Sub-Saharan. And a dose of poetry. A pharmacy is dispensing a special capsule revealing the therapeutic power of poetry. All that and more as World News Tonight starts right now.
This is Derana World News Tonight.
A very good evening and welcome to World News Tonight. We are here to bring you key stories across the globe for this Wednesday, and we begin today in South Korea. South Korea plunges into political crisis in the hours since President Yoon Suk-yeol's aborted attempt to declare martial law, which sparked widespread backlash and mounting pressure for him to step down.
Protesters and police faced off outside the South Korean parliament on Tuesday after the country's president declared martial law in a surprise late-night address. The move thrust Seoul into political crisis, with opposition lawmakers calling the declaration unconstitutional and protesters descending on the legislature. Lawmakers rushed to the National Assembly where the Speaker of Parliament declared the martial law announcement invalid. Legislators early on Wednesday voted to reject it. Images showed political aides barricading the doors inside the assembly, while footage showed soldiers in tactical gear mustering outside the building. President Yoon Suk-yeol said martial law was necessary to eradicate what he called, quote, pro-North Korean anti-state forces. But the leader of the opposition Democratic Party, which has a majority in parliament, called on his fellow citizens to reject the declaration. In a live stream, Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung said tanks, armored personnel carriers, and soldiers with guns and knives will rule the country. The military said activities by parliament and political parties would be banned, and that media and publishers would be under the control of the martial law command. A White House spokesperson said the United States is in contact with the South Korean government and is monitoring the situation closely. It is the first time since 1980 that martial law was declared in South Korea. President Yoon cited a motion by the opposition Democratic Party this week to impeach some of the country's top prosecutors and its rejection of a government budget proposal.
Over in Vietnam, a court upheld a death sentence for real estate tycoon Truong My Lan after rejecting her appeal against convictions for embezzlement and bribery in a high-profile $12 billion fraud case.
Lan was sentenced to death in April for her role in what was Vietnam's biggest financial fraud case on record. She had appealed against a conviction for embezzlement and bribery in the high-profile $12.5 billion case. But the High People's Court determined there was no basis to reduce Lan's death sentence, according to a Vietnamese online newspaper. The media report also said it is possible the sentence could be commuted to life imprisonment if Lan can return 3/4 of the money embezzled while on death row. The case is part of a years-long crackdown on corruption in a campaign locally known as Blazing Furnace. Lan, who was the chairwoman of Van Tin Phat Holdings Group, still has the right to request a review under Vietnam's cassation or retrial procedures. Her arrest in 2022 sparked a run on Saigon Joint Stock Commercial Bank, which was at the centre of the fraud and largely owned by Lan through her proxies. Apart from the death sentence, Lan was handed a life sentence at a separate trial in October. She was found guilty of obtaining property by fraud, money laundering and illegal cross-border money transfers.
China has announced a prohibition on exports of dual-use items to the US in a tit-for-tat move against Washington's latest crackdown on its semiconductor sector. Beijing's Commerce Minister stated that it will ban exports of items related to gallium, germanium, antimony and superhard materials that have potential US military applications. The items are primarily used in semiconductors, ammunition and nuclear weapons. A short commercial break now, more world news on the other side. to the White House now. Notre Dame Cathedral will reopen in Paris this weekend with incoming US President Donald Trump to attend the ceremony, marking the resurrection of the Gothic masterpiece 5 years after a devastating fire. It'll be Trump's first foreign trip since his re-election last month in a political comeback.
A Mass for the Ages on Saturday at Notre Dame Cathedral, back from the ashes after a devastating fire in 2019. More than 50 world leaders are expected to attend, among them US President-elect Donald Trump, who RSVP'd on Monday morning. This will be Trump's first engagement abroad since winning the election. In a sign, global leaders are anticipating his return to the White House. President Joe Biden, a devout Catholic, will not be in attendance. First Lady Jill Biden making the journey for the both of them. Security will be high at the invite-only ceremonies, while public viewing areas for 40,000 spectators will be set up on the riverbank. 6,000 police officers and soldiers are set to be deployed on the cathedral's island location, with shops closed and access restricted to the surrounding area.
US President Joe Biden has made his first and only visit to sub-Saharan Africa during his presidency, where he will highlight a US-backed railway project meant to counter China's influence on the continent.
The visit to oil-rich Angola is part of a US effort to focus more on trade and investment in Africa, in what some analysts see as a counter to China's influence on the continent. In his first and only trip to Africa during his presidency, Biden's choice of Angola is significant and it signals a dramatic improvement in relations between the two nations. Biden's Angola visit aims to showcase his attempts to rival China welcoming the US president to the country. Lorenzo said the visit marks an important turning point in their relationship, which will undoubtedly gain a new dynamic. Biden said in response he's deeply proud of everything that they have done together to transform this partnership thus far. Angola was firmly in the political orbit of China and Russia after independence from Portuguese colonial rule in 1975. But since taking power in 2017, Lorenzo has steered it towards closer relations with the US. Biden is due to visit a slavery museum. More than 4 million slaves were forcibly sent from this region of Africa to the Americas. The White House said in a statement, "Together, the United States and Angola acknowledge the past horrors of slavery and its legacy, while looking forward to a brighter future of continually deepening collaboration between the two nations."
The conflict in Ukraine is continuing to escalate, with significant developments occurring both on the battlefield and in international diplomacy. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy called for increased defenses in eastern Ukraine in response to substantial Russian advances in Donetsk and Zaporizhia.
Ukrainian troops have withdrawn from several villages, and Zelenskyy has emphasized the urgent need for additional Western-supplied weaponry to counter the Russian offensives. On the same day, the United States announced a new military aid package worth $725 million, which includes rockets, landmines, and counter-drone systems. During German Chancellor Olaf Scholz's visit to Kyiv on Monday, Zelenskyy reiterated the need for more weapons and stronger diplomatic backing in order to achieve a just peace with Russia. Scholz reaffirmed Germany's strong support for Ukraine and encouraged continued diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict. Ahead of the upcoming NATO ministerial meeting, Ukraine's diplomacy chief Andriy Sybiha urged NATO partners to provide at least 20 air defense systems to help protect against Russian aerial attacks. Ukraine has also conducted tests on new homemade missiles and is increasing missile production.
As tit-for-tat strikes strain a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah less than a week since it went into effect, Israel's defense minister threatened to directly target the Lebanese state should the agreement fall apart. It comes a day after Israel conducted airstrikes across southern Lebanon. The attacks were retaliation for Hezbollah firing 2 rockets at Israeli-occupied territory, a response to near-daily Israeli attacks on Lebanon, beginning the day after a truce began.
The Israeli defense minister warns that if the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah breaks down, Israel will expand its strikes beyond areas where Hezbollah is concentrated and target the Lebanese state itself. His comments come as both sides of the conflict accuse the other of violating the ceasefire. Israel largely refrained from striking critical infrastructure of the Lebanese armed forces during the 14th-month conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. The war appeared to have come to an end last week after a ceasefire brokered by the United States and France, but is threatened as attacks continue.
Meanwhile, a spokesperson of the Qatari foreign ministry said Qatar has not yet resumed the suspended mediation negotiations on ceasefire in the Gaza Strip.
Mahed bin Mohammed Al Ansari, the spokesman, made the statement at a press conference, saying that based on the attitude of the parties involved in the Gaza conflict towards participating in the negotiations, Qatar suspended its mediation work in November. He said at present the country's position has not changed, and only after the parties involved express sincerity and seriousness will Qatar restart its mediation work. Their regional communication would also not be stopped. The suspension is of the mediation process itself, where they are engaged in that mediation process, so they can continue contact with their neighbors and beyond. On the situation in Syria, Al Ansari said that Qatar is consulting with countries in the region and hopes to work together with partners to find an effective way to end the conflict in Syria. Further adding, he said they are hopeful that the parties in question in Syria would use dialogue and would go to the negotiation table. They are supportive of any initiative that would lead to peace in Syria, and they are coordinating with partners in the region and beyond to make sure they work together towards ending the situation in Syria and reaching a positive outcome.
As protests against the Georgian ruling party's postponement of EU accession talks extended to a sixth day, the country's public ombudsman accused police of engaging in acts of torture in clashes with protesters. The country has been rocked by demonstrations since the ruling Georgian Dream Party announced last week it would hold EU accession talks.
It's the sixth night of major protests here in Tbilisi. Pro-EU demonstrators chant slogans and blow whistles in front of the parliament as police stand their guard behind riot shields. Tensions have reached a boiling point. Last Thursday, Prime Minister Irakli Kobahidze said Georgia would postpone its EU accession goals for 4 years. The announcement prompted nightly protests, which he accuses of being funded by partisan interests propping up his opposition. The Prime Minister also suggested he would punish civil servants who take part in the protests. Georgia's parliamentary election in October, which saw Kobahidze's party win another majority, still remains contested. The country's president, hailing from his opposition, filed a lawsuit in November to annul the recent results. Georgia's constitutional court rejected it on Tuesday. Reacting to the news, President Salome Zurabishvili said she was Georgia's only remaining legal authority.
Today we find ourselves in a perilous situation. Constitutional authority has been stripped away. A metaphorical knife was plunged into the constitution, thoroughly tearing it apart. What remains of the government? The only legitimate constitutional institution in this country is myself. I carry a tremendous responsibility.
With each dueling political authority vying for legitimacy, protesters and the Georgian people may have to forge their own political path forward.
The EU's outgoing Justice Commissioner Didier Reynders faced police questioning and a raid on his home over suspicions of money laundering during a previous mandate as a Belgian government minister.
Belgian police raided properties linked to former European Commissioner for Justice Didier Reynders. With local media reporting, he is suspected of money laundering. For years, Reynders reportedly bought lottery tickets through the Belgian National Lottery, an organisation which he oversaw as minister between 2007 and 2011. It is alleged that he took part in lottery games and deposited the resulting, now laundered profits into his personal accounts. Local media report that the investigation had been ongoing for months, that investigators waited until the end of Reynders' term as European Commissioner on Sunday, which also marked the end of his EU immunity. One of the properties reportedly raided was Reynders' private property, with the former EU Justice Chief questioned by police until Tuesday evening.
Let's go for a short commercial break now. More world news coming on the other side. Welcome back. Meet Neo, the AI-powered robo from 1X designed for chores, companionship and remote telepresence. As the race to integrate humanoid robots into daily life intensifies, Neo's creators aim to redefine home technology interaction.
A robot like this could one day take over your household chores. Meet Neo, a humanoid robot powered by artificial intelligence. The prototype is the brainchild of 1X, a company based in Norway and Silicon Valley. Neo is one entry into the race to bring humanoid robots into our homes. On top of its job performing household duties, the robot can be operated remotely from anywhere in the world. That's according to Bernd Bornage, the CEO and founder of 1X. While the current prototype demonstrated for Reuters was piloted by humans remotely, 1X says the market-ready version will use AI and remote control. The company says that version will be unveiled in 2025. As for the price, 1X says they can't reveal those details yet, but expect it to be in line with a mid-priced new car. Bornage said he has been testing the robots at home with his own family, including a previous version named Eve. Neo faces stiff competition. Tesla has ambitious plans, with Elon Musk saying its Optimus or Tesla bot will be, quote, the biggest product ever of any kind. In October 2024, Musk predicted a future with 10 billion humanoid robots, priced between $20,000 and $25,000 by 2040. And Beijing-based startup Robotic Era recently released video of its Star One humanoid robot traversing the challenging terrain of China's northwestern Gobi Desert.
And finally tonight, an unusual pharmacy is dispensing capsules of poetry to make people feel better.
Hidden in the heart of busy London, a pharmacy dispensing a different kind of medicine. A balm for broken hearts, Christmas spirit and joy. Deb Alma calls herself a poetry pharmacist, using words to soothe the soul. In her first shop, an old ambulance, she decided to take poetry to people who didn't normally read it. Now, at her poetry pharmacy in London, hand-rolling little strips of wonder by the thousands.
All I want is a room up there, and you in it.
Her place of healing, a social media sensation. And there's a little something to satisfy our darker sides, too. From imagination to hope and healing. Happiness in a bottle.
And with that, we wrap up today's bulletin. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest updates from around the world. Stay tuned as we've got Sanavi Mudannaike joining you next on the Nightly Business Report. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.